Thank you all for coming out. We're deeply appreciative of you all being here. And of course, Sapphire, Angela, and Whitney, thank you as well for the work that you're doing with this particular book. We're just gonna get right into it. Reynaldo Walcott was author, professor, and one of our preeminent Black cultural scholars, characterizes the anthology as offering a Black Canadian diasporic life in full color and full of desire. Afua Cooper calls it miraculous, a rich jambalaya of writings that take on difficult subjects, but also carrying with them their own needed medicines. So Whitney, I wonder if we might start with you. You've performed, as you put it, an active community, a gathering of diverse voices in this particular anthology. So why don't we talk a little bit about why that act of cultural custodianship is important and what lies beyond it?
Okay. I think a lot about what writing does, what words do, with what I have a relationship with words and words having a relationship with me. And then I also think about what an anthology can do, right? I believe that like often when we pick up like a book or an anthology, it's like canonizing something, right? It's kind of telling you who you should read, who is important, who is relevant, and then what you are speaking to is this gathering, right? Gathering up different stories, gathering up different cultures. It feels very sacred, you know? It's like you have to be kind of precious and careful and considerate with the narratives. It's an absolute joy just to be the editor of this anthology and for people to trust me with their stories. Like, this is creative nonfiction. These are people's like lived experience. This is their heart, soul. This is like things that they may not have told their loved ones, and yet they've decided to put this into print, which is something you can't take lightly. So that kind of gathering, that work is it's like a practice.
Great. And in that practice, Angela, you meditate so beautifully and succinctly about what turns out to be something we have in common. It's one of my favorite books in all of literary history, The Sweet Flypaper of Life, which is a collaboration between photographer Roy de Caravat and Langston Hughes. I wonder if you might talk about the photographic image as a kind of speaking to how we are embodied in the broader culture, because we get the sense of permanence or the illusion of permanence from photographs. And here we have this beautiful exchange between a photographer and a poet doing some really complex and beautiful work. Take us through your relationship with that.
Well, my relationship with words and pictures is multifaceted. I started out as a freelance writer, and I decided it was time to delve into something else. I needed to take a break from writing, so I entered the world of visual arts, and it changed my whole perspective in that I was questioning still the value and the strength. What is more, not so much important, but what holds more strength? Is it the word or is it the picture? And I found, as soon as I picked up this book and it came to me, literally, it kept coming my way. It was mentioned at numerous events, and I would say, oh, okay, I need to take a look at this book. I put it aside. And then it just kept hounding me. And I said, you know what, there's something here. I've got to check this out. So I went to the library, and they said they didn't have a copy. So a long story short, the library was able to get a copy through an interlibrary loan. And when it finally landed in my lap, I was like, this is a jewel. Because there's this even keel between the writer and the visual artist, the photographer, which you don't necessarily see. It's in it's an equality that exists in the arts, which is so difficult to achieve. And it's, to me, a masterpiece because, yes, it's a sign, it's permanent, but at the same time, every time you look at it, every time you read through the words and pick up the book and look through the pictures, it changes every time you're taken on that journey. And so for me, the ability to have this in my possession and to sort of contemplate the whole importance and the meaning of words versus pictures, it's become sort of my go-to. It's a definite resource. I think that if you haven't had the opportunity, you should look into it because it is a marvel for me. I can't say enough about it. That's one of the best for me.
Yeah, and it was out of print for many, many years.
Yeah.
Right? And they've just brought back a heritage edition. I'm not even sure how easy it is to get your hands on it, but I have one, so I decided to come rub it in everyone's faces.
Well, actually, there's a nice ending to the story. The library has copies, so you can sign it out. So so definitely.
Yeah, so I wonder if we can stay a little bit longer in this dynamism of that interplay between the image and the word and that hybridity. I think there's something particular about existing, in multiplicity that is particular to the Black diaspora or to even diaspora. But let's talk about why, you found that sort of richness at the point that you found it, and what that work in and of itself extends into like the broader work that you're doing with words, with community, with your own interdisciplinary practice.
Well, I think the book speaks for itself in that it covers so many topics. It looks at race, it looks at family, it looks at the family unit, and I think you need to decide if it's the resource for you in terms of delving into the whole history of us as Black people. And just because it's staged within the American network or framework, it applies on a global scale. It even applies to us as Canadians in that we're experiencing the same thing, and race relations, as we all know, it's an issue. It's an issue that will continue to, sort of make its way into the mainstream and into our daily lives. So it's an important tool in that it's showing that we are people who can exist within communities, but also globally we have an opportunity to sort of change perceptions. Mm. And I don't want to speak for the author, but that's my interpretation. That's what I took from it. Yeah. That you have to sort of literally read between the lines, because it's a tiny, tiny volume, but it speaks so richly. And the very fact that you have like black and white images, yes, some people say, well, it's missing, the color is better, but for me, it's so rich and it traverses so many different levels. It's leaving you to sort of tell that story. These are random images, but at the same time, Hughes was able to create this narrative, which is so deep and so rich. It's a craft, it's a skill, it's a talent that Hughes was able, and de Graaf, they were able to speak volumes with this piece. And as you can tell, I adore this book. I was just saying previously, their eyes were watching God. That was up there for me. But this on a different level, I think it speaks on so many different platforms and to so many different groups.
Yeah.
So many different people, so I don't know.
Good. So in speaking between the lines and in this interplay between shadow and light, we can take that a step further, Sapphire, I guess, and talk about your really quite complex and intimate musing on how you came to a poetics that you can claim as your own. So talk to us a little bit about, queerness that does not elide blackness and vice versa, and how you came to that sort of consciousness.
Thank you for that question. I think when we talk about queerness, it's always kind of, even the word queer, it's other than, and of course, blackness, black skin, black hair, black culture, it's everywhere, but it's always seen on the outer layers of everything. So to come into queerness at a time that I was really embracing and internalizing, which is interesting, my blackness didn't seem to be so, it seemed more familiar than foreign in a sense. I think I spent definitely most of my life trying to be in the center of things, trying to keep up with what do folks outside of me interpret based on my skin, based on how I'm behaving, based on how my body presents, etc. So to come into those things is to reclaim otherness in a way that is just for me. And then no one's, again, that image, right? What they want to interpret is one thing, but if I have my own definition, it's a little bit easier to navigate, I guess, the possibility of everything else.
Great. So in that navigation, you take us right in the middle of the tertiary education complex, and you're messing with things there for us a little bit. So why don't you talk about how that education complex, that you get into university and everyone's talking about the same theories for, hundreds of years, and it's the same thing in 50,000 different classes that you take, and that can prolong kind of hegemonic thinking about who we are and how we function. Why don't you take us into the heart of that thing that you did in that essay?
Absolutely. So all of the authors that I was presented with were white. And I remember reading Jeanette Winterson, which is prominent in my part in the anthology. And I remember reading Jeanette Winterson. I don't know if anyone else has read Jeanette Winterson. So gay. And and I remember reading this not as even part of any course, but one of my professors was like, I think you might enjoy this, on the low. And it was funny because she was the only one that also, I guess what you also should know is that the university that I went to was Seventh-day Adventist, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but it's very conservative Christian. And so for her to slide me Jeanette Winterson, now you're kind of getting the bigger picture of wow, that never really happened. So that was really awesome. And to read her, for me, was very empowering in terms of there's something out there that's not straight. But it also made me mad because I'm like, how come only, it looks like only white women get to experience passionate otherness? That's so unfair. And from then, I just, kind of stirred shit up. Sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Sorry. I just won't, though. I really tried to mess with all of my professors from then on. They would want to talk about, I don't know, who else is white in the canon, everybody pretty much. But they'd be like, yeah, we need to really study these men, and we need to understand what this poem by this white woman is saying. And I just remember sitting there, and again, it was February. This one time we were trying to go through this one poem. I forget what it was, but it was something around sensuality between women, but you're not really supposed to name it as a lesbian literature, whatever. And I just remember looking out the window, and this is my face, just you don't even know. You have no idea. And I was mad. I was just mad. So my questions and my essays were always putting forward what does blackness look like when you put in bodies that are not white or are not cis? What does it look like when the love that you have is for yourself in the light of a lot of violence that is happening to you? And you're kind when you're watching not only bodies around you falling, but you're not even seeing that in the canon. You're not even seeing writing by that. Like, what do you have to say about that professor, whatever? And they had nothing to say. So from there, I kind of just studied on my own, and that studying became what informed my full entire existence.
Great. So you took charge of your own re-education. You did the Lauryn Hill thing, and
Absolutely.
you're like, class coming. Let's talk about LOVE.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Exactly.
Cool. So you're all, talking about how your contributions foreground some distinct ways that writing or literature or interdisciplinary work in that vein works against the erasure of particular Black histories and personal histories. Talk about the contemporary moment you're writing out of, and any of you can jump in here.
Yeah, I think I have to speak now. I want to speak to that, but first, I do have to just take a quick pause, because as an editor, it's a really beautiful moment to hear from my contributors. And yes, we've had conversations and kind of through the editorial process, but to hear your passion, hearing about this book, and when you read the essays, you'll see the whole journey of getting the book, and then to hear kind of the more nuanced, the more comical moments of your experience, because it gets pretty heavy and gets pretty dark. It's a joy. So I had to just put some love on that really quickly. But yeah, speaking to writing in this moment, this contemporary moment, I feel sometimes I want to create a bubble of timelessness, right? So the art of the anthology, there have been Black anthologies in this country for decades on, and there's going to be a continuum of anthologies, Black anthologies in this country in the future. So a lot of what I'm thinking about is, how do you kind of pinpoint these moments? How do you pinpoint conversations that are happening? It's very intentional that there are some pieces that are speaking to Black Lives Matter Toronto in one particular light, and then another piece that is speaking in another particular light, and making sure that they are beside each other within the text itself, but then also making it timeless, right? What are the qualities of being Black outside of oppression and outside of struggle, and what kind of futures can we imagine and project and envision and explore? I don't know if I answered your question, but I latched on to the concept of time and timelessness, and I really wanted to speak to that, but I definitely didn't answer your question.
You're good.
All right, we good.
If I could just add to that, when I initially submitted my proposal to Whitney, it was completely different. It had nothing to do with the sweet flypaper of life. In that, yeah,
It's coming back now. Go ahead.
it was a piece that actually addressed some of the issues that I experienced as the only Black person living in North York on a street that's, it's a nice area. And yeah, so I didn't pull any punches in terms of how I was feeling and sort of the issues surrounding that. But, Whitney said, maybe you should try submitting something else. And I'm glad she did that, because I was able to explore something that was always nagging me. Like I said before, it just came around so many different times in lectures, and I said, I have to deal with this. It's funny, because when I was here, I think it was last week, when the library had Andre Alexis, he said something to the effect of, if an idea comes to you, you can't ignore it. it's going to keep revisiting. So as a writer, I think there are hints, there are cues that we're always given, and it's up to us to sort of investigate it and explore it further. Because for me, I know that I'm not finished with this whole idea of photography and words and pictures and visual art as a whole. For me, it was always a struggle, as I mentioned before, with regards to the words versus the pictures. And for me, it's like a happy medium now. And De Crava and Hughes were able to level that plane, and it's beginning to make sense, and it's changed my perspective, literally, in how I approach art, how I look at art, how I respond to art, and how I participate in art. So it was a learning, it was a lesson, in a tough lesson in learning how to navigate that. But at the same time, it was meant to be. And judging from the different stories that came out and from this anthology, there's so many levels, ups and downs, ups and downs. And I mean, no two stories are the same, and the approaches are so varied and wide, and I think that's what readers will appreciate from the collection. I mean, it takes you on the highs and the lows, and as an artist, a Black artist, I was also questioning, do I have to talk about race in that heavy way? Like, can I be implicit in what I'm saying? And yeah, I think it's up to us as artists, writers, take it where you want it to go. And in the contemporary lens, I don't think we should be told how our response should be or what we should be writing as writers, as artists. Just do your thing.
And for myself, when Whitney was asking if I would be able to submit something, the original piece was massive. It had so many themes in it. And when I was writing it, I was so mad. I had just come from, and again, talking about like academia and feeling very othered in academia, even the way I learned and spoke. I was in another symposium, and they were talking about queerness, and it was all straight white people. It was crazy. And like the feeling that you get when you're so like you're big mad and you just want to like fight everyone in the room, but then everyone's just sitting like this and using like really big words that I have to Google, and just like it makes you so mad. Like you can't talk about my people like that, you know what I mean? While also excluding us at the same time. So I'm writing this thing furious. And when he's like, okay, so we're gonna need to break this down in like the sweetest, kindest, most compassionate way. Like I know you really felt like my fury. So I really appreciated that. Thank you, Whitney. And so we did break it down, and that was really like cathartic also, to be like, you don't have to take out all of these pieces that are important to you. You can also be implicit in what you're saying. And that was really, really powerful. So taking that and moving forward a little bit, my piece is called Becoming Poetry. And even from that moment, it's kind of like working through, you know, the anger and the frustration and the hurt, and also the embracing of like my queerness and my Blackness and how beautiful that journey was. And then the last paragraph of the whole work begins with, as a woman. And I remember reading that after you spoke to me about that, and I was like, damn, I don't know how I feel about that, because I don't identify as a woman. And so I spoke to one of the people that I hold close to my heart, Kusha Dadui, and I was like, Kusha, I don't know what to do about this, because I'm going to be doing this reading, and I don't know how to feel about this. Like, I don't want to negate this moment in time that I experienced, but I also don't feel the same way, so it's very conflicting for me. And again, going back to your piece and talking about photography and holding that present time, Kusha was like, you don't have to take away that experience that you had. Like, you can still own that and still talk about yourself in a future sense. And that, to me, was really powerful. So it is still a becoming, and it comes around full circle to be able then to sit side by side with an editor like Whitney, to be a writer alongside Angela, and then to be moderated like this. Like, you aren't actually other, and you can still be moving forward, and everyone else is moving forward in a very contemporary way as well. And that, to me, is just, it brings it all together. You're not on the outside of Blackness, you're on the outside of queerness. It all actually blends together really perfectly.
And speaking of this centering or working from, as Dion Brand puts it, the center of your life. There's so much transnational, global cultural participation that has come from a lot of Black innovation and Black creativity, in spite of the fact that, Blackness is usually thought of as a kind of othering or center for othering. I wanted to talk about, I wonder if you can maybe give us some insight into your relationship with imagining forward in your works, in the various locations that you're existing in. How do you imagine forward? So diaspora or Blackness as a place of futurity rather than being tethered to a past narrative.
I'm like thinking a lot about local love and like international love, and not necessarily like borders per se. It's almost like you enter a space and like you see another Black person and like you recognize their patois and you get real hype and excited, Or when you're like, speaking to a Black person and maybe you both don't share the same first language, but like, you hear something like in the music or the rhythm and then you're both kind of like moving, or even just like you meet a Black person and they like flick their wrist kind of like how your uncle would or whatever. Like there's just like this commonality like that's like very like localized. And being a Black person in Toronto specifically, like there's like, it's very different than being a Black person in like a rural area. And like I grew up in Bradford and I talk a little bit about it in the introduction. And there's just like this difference when you're surrounded by or in closer proximity with more Black folks versus like you barely see any at all. And so that diasporic, that like moving forward, it's like, how do you get like that like almost, and I'm gonna be a little indulgent and say like intergalactic, like Black head nod vibe going on. How does it just transform and just like blast through like all of these different kind of things that are really rigid and are very real. Anti-Black racism is very real, and like borders and like migration and like all of that is all very real. Like I think it comes back to the words, it comes back to the storytelling. And I think I put a lot of faith, maybe a little too much faith, maybe too much naive faith in that to kind of propel us onward.
Gotcha. What are y'all two thinking?
Sorry, one more quick thing though. Sorry, really, really quick though, super quick, like microscopic, is just like Black Canada is global. Do you know what I mean? In a different way that like African American culture is very kind of rooted in kind of that very particular slave narrative. It's like, it's just like so great to like get pieces from people from the continent, people who have generations who've been here from time, people who come from Britain, people who come from all over. So that as well. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
We're done.
For me, looking into the future is something I prefer to look into the present. So, I mean, it's an essential thing that we sort of assess where we are as a people and sort of say, okay, well, this person's doing something that isn't expected of them. They're breaking the mold. And I think it's necessary to try different things and to think outside of that box. And I think in particular for Black History Month, we're sort of looking and recognizing the efforts and sort of the struggle that we have endured as a people, but also we should be looking forward at and taking those lessons from the past and sort of saying, well, how are we going to change things? And in particular, and specifically in our writing too, I think that we can sort of change that focus, that way of presenting material. And for me specifically, I think as an artist, I need to tap into the past. Okay, so I talked about present, I talked about future, now I'm talking about past. So it's a cyclical thing. And you can't get away from one without tapping into the other. I think essentially that's where I need to frame this thought. We all have a responsibility to sort of educate ourselves about, where we were, where we are, and where we would like to go, whether that be as a people or individually or as a collective. So, yeah, that's a really, oh wow, food for thought.
Yummy food.
I mean, I really feel it might be redundant, but my queer lens absolutely, literally embodies what y'all are saying. Everywhere around me, everyone is shape-shifting and becoming the future that they want to see. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really speaking to academia anymore as I am really speaking to queer identities and to what it means to have to not only do the education about the past and really understand contextually, like, am I safe here in this present, or do I have to fling myself forward and literally be and become a whole different person for my own survival? That is what we have to do in queer communities in order to keep afloat. And again, coming from the intersections of Blackness, what does it mean for words to free you? What does it mean to change your pronouns? A word means a lot. And so when someone says to me, oh yeah, so Sapphire, they do XYZ, I am that future that I wanted to see for myself. And that is so affirming. And again, breaking that mold. What molds have we built? What molds are even necessary? There are some molds that I'm like, I don't even need to look at you anymore, because not that you don't matter, but you're a mold nonetheless, when I can actually just be anything I want to be, which is inclusive of whatever I want to be as well. So kind of like thinking about futurity, thinking about everything that I am is kind of like a cyborg, like a little bit of all these parts. Some of them are very like mechanical and industrial, and I gotta work on being sometimes a person and embracing the person and not just the projection. But so there's the flesh part of me, there's the machine part of me, and then there's the image or like the daydream of what I want to be, and how all of those kind of come together into something. Who knows what it'll be yet?
Great. We're gonna get into the Q&A in about 7 minutes, but before we get there, I just wonder if each of you can speak to one of the things that I found most vital in the anthology, which were reminders of the power inherent in story and language, and your various locations of ownership in that. Just give us a couple minutes each for that.
You said the word story and ownership. And as a steward of this collection, I don't own this book. I am responsible to these stories. That's what I have to say about that.
Where your power at?
I'm thinking that to be a part of this collection, it sort of exceeded sort of my expectations, and to be here tonight also, because I think what this book has shown me is that we take quite a bit for granted. Living in this world today, there was a time when I wouldn't have access to the material that is so readily available to us. I mean, there was a time when I wouldn't be able to access the books at a library. So for me sitting here right now, to acknowledge those who weren't able to do that and who had greater talent, greater insights than me, I feel it's my sort of responsibility. And I don't have that choice. And I think that's a constant thought that's going on when I'm expressing and creating, and I'm saying to myself, oh, this doesn't make sense, oh, this, and second guessing myself. But there are a lot of opportunities that I've been afforded by my, forefathers, and it wasn't available to them. So in a nutshell, I think the book, the collection, and the writings that came from it cements a lot of things for me from a historical perspective, but also as a contemporary writer, and that it's grounding me. And I found that the arts sort of has given me that ability to say, I'm thinking this, and so it's given me a wide ability to sort of navigate and investigate topics that I never would have considered before. So I know I did not go necessarily to the question that you had asked, but I just wanted to express that. Yeah.
Related. Thank you.
The question was about like where your power comes from.
The power of story and language, and how this compendium of a kind is doing some really particular and important work right now. So just, again, give us some insight into your thoughts about that.
For me, what's coming up is the power that you can receive in being believed. Having Whitney saying, like, y'all have stories, and I want you to tell them. I want you to tell them. It's not like whether or not, like, do you have a story that's relevant? Does it fit into a canon? Does this make sense? Even, it was under the assumption, not even the assumption, that pre-belief, whatever that word is, that your story is going to be relevant even. You're going to be in this anthology and it's going to fit. In the last editing phases, my partner was like, you're amazing. I'm like, you're supposed to say that, of course. I'm amazing to you. But having someone sit alongside you in unedited drafts and say, like, your story is so powerful, you're going to be read by people, or the past yous into this future, the you that was so mad that you were not part of a canon, you're here now. And to be believed in that sense is futuristic and also so affirming at the same time. And again, that responsibility piece to stay writing and stay believed.
Great. Excellent. Thank you.